South Korea is known for its intensive education system. Because of this, many South Koreans have walked out of the country to high-ranking jobs or stayed to become top-tier and prosperous. But what we don't see is the daily struggle and excessive pressure placed on the shoulders of mere children, whose childhoods have in some ways taken away. However, the unfortunate truth remains. Competition is fundamental for students to get to one of the only known ways of success, the Sky Universities. The belief being built constantly and consistently is that being in a good university gets them to a high-paying job and should be their ultimate goal. However, it's 2024, and South Korea's educational costs are rising every day. With competition at an all-time high, disadvantaged students are being left behind in the education system. Is it fair that children born with a golden spoon receive the best education? How and why are disadvantaged students being left behind, and how does that impact their right to education? The divide between advantaged and disadvantaged students is heavily influenced by their parents. And most of all, disadvantaged students can't do anything about it. Which is why private education at high cost limits the right to education for disadvantaged students in South Korea. Many children in South Korea begin receiving private education at age 6. However, a survey also shown that middle to high-income families spend 5 times more on private education compared to low-income families in Korea. High costs are also shown during the pandemic when some families lacked access to technologies for their children. Despite trials to solve the lack of technology-such education, test scores saw their most critical gap. Even with assistance from organizations such as the Ministry of Education, the significant underprivileged and small amount of help cannot compete with the continuous efforts and substantial assist of their privileged peers aiming for nothing except the top. According to this graph, although the entry rates more recently are significantly higher than entry rates from 50 years ago, we can also see that the higher the grade, the more difficult it is for students to be accepted. As competition increases, the ones who move on are no doubt the privileged students who can afford the most amount of private education. However, many argue that private education has a small impact on the right to education, and the government is already implementing measures to address inequalities for disadvantaged students in South Korea. In 2023, President Yoon Suk-yeol gave instructions to remove any content not taught in school from the annual entrance exam. It is clear that the government is attempting to lower the inequality in entrance exams for disadvantaged students. Furthermore, according to Korea, the Impossible Country by Daniel Tudor, President Chun Do-hwan banned private lessons from expert tutors, thus private tuition in 1980, as it gives disadvantages to poor children. But even more than 20 years before, we see a defect in intent. The desire of parents to give any possible advantage for their children, though, render her efforts futile. Private lessons were legalized. What this proves is that private education significantly improves academic performance, and the government's actions are insufficient and futile for disadvantaged students in South Korea. With the increasing gap between lower-income and middle-high-income students who are unable to extensively attend Hagwons, among other opportunities, various cities and regions have thankfully implemented policies to equalize primary and secondary education. However, these policies does not apply to all of South Korea's or account for university entrance exams. If policies do not account for all of South Korea, disadvantaged students face more inequality due to their region. Not to mention that as time passes for all disadvantaged students, they will have to take the university entrance exams and will not hold the advantage from thousands to millions of hours privileged students have spent on private education, learning more and better. Even if policies exist, both common knowledge and past examples tells us that it's impossible to fully evenly distribute the quality of private education. Thus, all efforts, which are fairly minimal, will prove in the end futile and inadequate. But in the end, what can we do to solve the education inequality in South Korea? The government in the short term needs to make private education more accessible with technology and embrace various methods for the young generation to succeed in the long run, to bridge the divide for a better right to education for disadvantaged students in South Korea. We should integrate the current approach to managing after-school programs with a new system where top-tier institutions such as universities, companies, and organizations are selected and entrusted to run these programs to improve the quality and availability of after-school activities, thereby reducing dependence on private education. Already, digital reforms are being funded. With top-tier institutions, education inequality will be diminished in the short term. But from a long-term perspective, South Korea has to take on the job of embracing other methods to succeed for the younger generation, instead of just competition to the sky universities. This way, top-tier academic performances won't be a necessity to get to a higher place in society and life. South Korea should encourage more innovation. The education systems need to be more holistic and should include building aptitude, creativity, and values, embracing all talents and skills.